Northern Ireland appeals for calm after petrol bombs were hurled at a police vehicle in Derry ahead of US President Joe Biden's landmark visit.
Taiwan maintains patrols after Chinese warships and aircraft are still seen in the vicinity a day after Beijing's drills end.
French President Emmanuel Macron is in the Netherlands, where he is expected to discuss Europe's stance on Taiwan amid heightened military tensions between the US and China.
Germany is pulling the plug on its last 3 nuclear power plants. It will then start a decommissioning process that could take decades.
Police in Northern Ireland are on high alert ahead of US President Joe Biden's visit after officers were firebombed by dissident Republicans on Monday. Around 20 petrol bombs were hurled at an armoured police Land Rover amid a rally in Derry's predominantly Catholic Cregan estate, prompting officers to appeal for calm. Preparations to welcome the US President are underway elsewhere, particularly in the town of Ballina in County Mayo, the ancestral home of one of Biden's great-great-grandfathers who left for the United States in 1850. He is due to arrive in Belfast on Tuesday evening to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Peace Accord. Biden's 4-day trip will include a speech at Ulster University before he crosses the border into the Republic, where he will spend 3 nights meeting with the country's leaders, touring key landmarks and addressing the Irish Parliament. As part of his tour to Ireland, the US President is expected to retrace his route to the seaside town of Carlingford. 10 of Joe Biden's ancestors came from the Emerald Isle, and some of his distant relatives still live in the wider Cooley Peninsula.
We're very proud that Joe come from Cooley. His ancestral home is now the President of America. It's an unbelievable feeling, and the community is so proud of him.
Biden maintains close ties to Carlingford and has been to the town many times. But this will be his first visit as a US President. The municipality hopes his connection will help boost tourism in the region.
Taiwan says it's detected Chinese warships and aircraft still operating in the vicinity of the island. This comes a day after Beijing said it had completed 3 days of military exercises amid heightened tension in the region. Taipei says it's maintaining military vigilance after the war games, during which Beijing simulated targeted strikes and ended with a practice blockade of the island, which it views as its own. Meanwhile, the United States, which supports Taiwan's autonomy, and the Philippines have launched their largest joint military exercise in decades. Some 18,000 troops will be on joint manoeuvres until the 28th of April, including live fire exercises and a boat-sinking rocket assault. They're taking place for the first time under the presidency of Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who's trying to improve diplomatic ties with Washington. The drills are seen by analysts as a challenge to China's dominance in the region.
His first state visit in 23 years. The French President Emmanuel Macron is in the Netherlands, where he is expected to discuss Europe's stance on Taiwan. This after Macron sparked anger following his interview with the French daily Les Echos. He suggested the bloc should not get involved in Beijing and Washington's dispute over the self-ruled island and defended the EU's autonomy. In Washington, the reaction was strained.
There's a lot of terrific bilateral cooperation just alone between the United States and France. We're focused on that. We're focused on making sure that together we're meeting the national security requirements of both our peoples.
Macron's position vis-à-vis the US and China was meanwhile reinforced by the French economy minister, Bruno Le Maire. It follows Macron's 3-day visit to Beijing, where he met with Chinese President Xi Jinping. But after 3 days of large-scale drills over Taiwan, which experts say are designed to intimidate, China's army declared Monday it is ready to fight.
Rescue workers are continuing to search for survivors after a building collapsed in the southern French city of Marseille on Sunday following an explosion. So far, 6 bodies have been found, but 2 people are still missing.
On poursuit les actions de déblaiement et de recherche dans l'espoir de retrouver des victimes. Donc voilà, ça c'est sans cesse, on continue, on a toujours espoir.
Residents living in areas adjacent to Tivoli Street, where the explosion occurred, have been evacuated from their homes as they wait for experts to determine if the buildings are safe.
Au départ, ils nous ont dit prenez vos affaires pour un jour. On a pris pour un jour. En plus, on a eu 5 minutes pour partir. Donc là, on est revenu chercher les affaires parce qu'on ne sait pas combien ça va durer. Ça peut durer une semaine, ça peut le temps qu'il y ait des experts qui viennent pour voir les immeubles dans l'état où ils sont.
On Monday evening, a prayer vigil was held at a church near the site. It's not yet known what caused the explosion, but investigators are looking into the possibility that it could have been from a gas leak.
Russia continues to make gains in Bakhmut, but is suffering significant casualties in the process, says the Institute for the Study of War, the US-based think tank, in its daily update. Geolocated footage from the 9th and the 10th of April shows that Russian forces made marginal advances west of Bakhmut and southwest of the town. Ukrainian Ground Forces Commander Colonel General Oleksandr Syrsky has accused Russian troops of using scorched earth tactics in Bakhmut. He also stated that Ukrainian forces have exhausted Wagner forces so much that the Russian military command has had to send special forces and Russian airborne forces elements to Bakhmut. The UK Defence Ministry adds that Russian media reported the transfer of thermobaric multiple launch rocket systems to Russian airborne forces. The highly destructive systems, which Russia designates as heavy flamethrower, is typically operated by Russia's specialist chemical, biological and radiological protection troops in Ukraine and has not previously been formally associated with the airborne forces. The transfer likely indicates a future role for these elements in offensive operations in Ukraine. It is likely part of efforts to reconstitute the forces after it suffered heavy casualties in the first 9 months of the war. The Russian-installed head of Ukraine's Donetsk region said Russian forces controlled more than 75% of the besieged city of Bakhmut. While visiting the embattled city in the east of Ukraine, he said it was still too soon to announce a total victory in the battle over Bakhmut.
Thousands of Israeli settlers marched through the occupied West Bank on Monday to a former Jewish settlement that was evacuated 2 years ago. The massive demonstration was led by at least 7 members of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet, signaling the government's determination to accelerate settlement building in the occupied territories despite international opposition. Thousands of Israeli police and military forces were reportedly deployed to protect the march. They fired tear gas at Palestinians in a nearby village, who hurled stones at the soldiers to protest the demonstration. At least 2 people, including a journalist, were reportedly shot by Israeli rubber bullets. Also on Monday, Israeli troops killed a 15-year-old Palestinian teenager during a raid in a refugee camp near Jericho. An Israeli-British woman who was wounded in the West Bank on Friday in the Palestinian attack that killed her 2 daughters has also died. Tension is also high in Jerusalem after Israeli forces stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque twice last Wednesday. Last Friday, Israel announced the mobilization of its reserve police units and military reinforcements.
The Turkish Navy has officially added the TCG Anadolu-like aircraft carrier and amphibious assault ship to its arsenal, touting it as the world's first drone carrier. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the ship is a turning point for the country's defence industry, having been mostly built using local resources. Turkey is a NATO member and is favouring the use of combat drones. They're developed by the Baykar company, co-run by one of Erdogan's sons-in-law, and has been used in Azerbaijan and Ukraine. The UK's National Health Service is bracing for one of the most disruptive strikes yet. Junior doctors are taking industrial action for the next 4 days. The government is warning people to avoid risky behaviour that could land them in hospital. The strikes are over pay. The British Medical Association says the wage for junior doctors has fallen 26% in the last 15 years, with newly qualified medics making less than a barista in a coffee shop. It has demanded a 35% pay rise to restore 2008's levels.
Tennessee Representative Justin Jones is back in the State House of Representatives after a Nashville area council voted unanimously to restore him to office. Jones and another young lawmaker were expelled by the majority Republican legislators last week over their gun control protest in the House. Hundreds of people gathered in support of him outside the Nashville courthouse where the vote took place. After his reinstatement, Jones walked to the state capitol where he retook his oath of office.
Germany is pulling the plug on its last 3 nuclear power plants this week. The decision was decades in the making and was accelerated by fears brought on by Japan's Fukushima disaster, with some in Germany arguing that what happened in 2011 abroad could also happen at home. But the reactors going offline is just the first step of a dismantling process that could take decades.
In der Zerlegehalle werden wir Großkomponenten, das heißt Dampferzeuger und Reaktordruckgefäße zerlegen und damit werden wir noch bis in die 40er, 50er Jahre beschäftigt sein. Der Rückbau der Zerlegehalle ist für die 60er Jahre eingeplant. Also
The 3 nuclear reactors were kept running longer than planned because of fears sparked by the country's energy crisis. Germany will now have to decommission 29 reactors, a feat that could cost around 23 billion euros.